Jason dropped the guest list on the kitchen island. 40 names. Brooke, his new fiancée, stood next to him, her fingers nervously tracing the strap of her designer purse. She glanced at the massive list and quietly suggested that catering a Christmas engagement gala for 40 people might be too much work for one person. Jason just smirked. He leaned across the counter and looked right at me. He told her not to worry about it, claiming I loved being of service, since I was still unmarried. He said, doing this for them gave me a sense of purpose. My father, Daniel, stood right behind him, nodding in absolute agreement. He crossed his arms and ordered me to stay hidden in the kitchen during the actual party. He claimed my presence mingling with Brooke's high-class family would just make things awkward for Jason's image. My mother, Emma, just kept wiping down the stove in total silence. I swallowed the heavy, bitter lump in my throat and forced a bright, completely hollow smile. I told them it would be absolutely no problem at all. I watched them turn their backs and walk into the living room, laughing about the ice sculptures they wanted to order. The air in the kitchen suddenly felt so thin, my lungs burned. I stared at the back of my brother's perfectly tailored jacket, and a cold, terrifying clarity washed over me. For my entire life, I believed that if I just worked hard enough, if I sacrificed enough, they would eventually see me as a daughter, as a sister. Looking at them now, the truth was undeniable. I was not a family member to them. I was a free household appliance. And an appliance does not get invited to the party. It just stays plugged into the wall until it burns out. My hands gripped the edge of the granite counter until my knuckles turned stark white. I am 31 years old, Monday through Friday. I am a respected high school teacher. On the weekends, I run a highly successful boutique catering company. To my clients, I am an indispensable professional. To my family, I am the invisible safety net they wipe their muddy shoes on. The hypocrisy of Jason parading around as a wealthy entrepreneur made my stomach churn, mostly because I knew exactly what was buried beneath the floorboards of this house. 2 years ago, the bank sent a notice of foreclosure. Jason had secretly racked up massive underground gambling debts and a massive out-of-court settlement for a driving under the influence charge to keep his golden boy out of prison. Daniel secretly took out a second mortgage on the family home. When the payments overwhelmed them and the bank threatened to take the house, Daniel came to my apartment in the middle of the night. Weeping, he begged me to save them. I drained my entire life savings and my catering business capital. I wrote a check for $55,000. I saved my father from homelessness and my brother from a jail cell. But I am not naive. I knew exactly who I was dealing with. I did not just hand them cash. I hired a real estate attorney and formally registered that $55,000 as a legally binding promissory note and a lien against the deed of the house. I own their roof. And yet, here they were, ordering me to stay out of sight so I would not embarrass them. The clock struck midnight on December 23rd. I sat in the darkness of my apartment, the glow of my laptop illuminating the quiet room. I opened my wholesale catering portal. The massive order for Jason's party was right there on the screen. Prime rib, wild-caught salmon, artisanal cheeses, and imported champagne. $2,000 of luxury inventory, all billed to my personal account. I hovered the cursor over the screen. One click, and the entire order vanished. Canceled. Fully refunded. I grabbed my car keys and drove back to my parents' house. They were all fast asleep upstairs. I used my spare key to unlock the side door to the garage. Stepping into the freezing winter air, this garage was where I stored all my professional catering equipment because my apartment was too small. For 2 hours, I worked in absolute silence. I loaded 4 commercial chafing dishes, my industrial stand mixers, carving stations, and heavy silver serving platters into the back of my rental van. I stripped the shelves completely bare. I walked into the kitchen, opened their massive chest freezer, and left exactly one item on the empty rack, a single family-sized box of frozen dinosaur chicken nuggets. Before fleeing to the airport the next morning, I parked my car outside a rundown diner on the edge of town. Aunt Megan was already sitting in a corner booth, nursing a black coffee. Megan is my father's older sister, a sharp-tongued, fiercely observant woman who walked away from the family's toxicity decades ago. I slid into the booth and pushed a thick, sealed manila envelope across the sticky table. Inside were the notarized bank wire transfers, the payoff receipts from the gambling debt, and the official county records of my $55,000 lien on the house. Megan placed her hand flat over the envelope. I looked her dead in the eye and gave her one simple instruction. I told her that when Daniel inevitably tries to blame me for ruining their perfect Christmas, she needed to open that folder and show Brooke's wealthy parents exactly who they are marrying into. Megan's lips curled into a slow, dangerous smile. She slipped the envelope into her leather purse and told me to have a beautiful vacation. I boarded a 5 o'clock morning flight to Key West, Florida. The second the plane wheels left the tarmac, I powered down my phone. I spent Christmas Eve walking barefoot in the warm sand, listening to the ocean crash against the shore. I did not turn my phone back on until Christmas afternoon. When the screen illuminated, 52 missed calls and 20 frantic voicemails flooded the screen. I tapped the first voicemail from Daniel. His voice was a high-pitched, vibrating roar of panic. He screamed that the kitchen was empty. The equipment was gone, and the guests were arriving in 3 hours. He called me a bitter, jealous spinster trying to sabotage her brother's happiness. He swore he would make me pay for this. I deleted the message, took a sip of my iced tea, and let the Florida sun warm my face. Aunt Megan called me 3 days later to deliver the autopsy report of Jason's engagement gala. She painted the picture so vividly, I could almost smell the desperation. At 1 o'clock on Christmas Day, Brooke's parents arrived in cashmere coats, expecting a 5-star catered affair. Instead, they walked into a house smelling of burnt breading and cheap cooking oil. Jason was sweating profusely through his designer suit, frantically arranging microwave dinosaur nuggets onto flimsy paper plates because there was no fine china left to use. The 40 guests stood around the living room in stunned, awkward silence to save his own pride. Daniel stood in the center of the room and loudly attempted to control the narrative. He sighed dramatically and announced to the wealthy crowd that I had suffered a severe mental breakdown. He claimed I was so consumed by jealousy over Jason finding love that I abandoned my duties to punish them. The guests murmured in polite sympathy. Emma stood dutifully by Daniel's side, nodding along to the character assassination of her only daughter. That was the exact moment Aunt Megan stood up from her chair. The room fell into a dead, suffocating silence. Megan walked straight past Daniel, ignoring him completely, and stopped directly in front of Brooke's father. She did not yell. She spoke with clinical, terrifying precision. She handed him the manila envelope and told him to read the documents before he let his daughter sign her life away. Brooke's father pulled out the bank wires. He read the police reports from the driving under the influence charge. He traced his finger over the county lien, proving I owned the house they were standing in. The illusion shattered instantly. Megan turned to the crowd and stated clearly that Jason was not a wealthy entrepreneur. He was a broke, unemployed freeloader who nearly bankrupted his aging parents. Surviving solely on the charity of the sister, they just tried to treat like a scullery maid. Brooke stared at Jason, her face twisted in total disgust, looking at him not as a partner, but as a massive financial liability. She silently slid the diamond engagement ring off her finger, dropped it onto a paper plate right next to a cold chicken nugget, and walked out the front door. Her parents followed right behind her. Within 10 minutes, the entire house emptied out, leaving Jason standing alone in the absolute ruins of his manufactured ego. But Jason did not learn his lesson. Entitlement rarely surrenders without a violent fight. That evening, as I was packing my suitcase in my hotel room, my phone buzzed with an emergency alert from my smart home security system. I opened the live camera feed. Jason was standing in my Charlotte apartment. He had used an old emergency spare key I forgot to take back years ago. I watched him on the glowing screen, pacing like a caged animal, kicking my coffee table and sweeping my books onto the floor. He was shouting to an empty room, swearing he was going to find my business laptop and my physical client ledger. He intended to steal them, throw them in a dumpster, and email all my corporate clients to tell them I was a thief, just to burn my catering business to the ground in retaliation. He thought he could bully me into submission. He forgot I am a woman who audits cartel-level high school drama for a living, and I always have a backup plan. My laptop contained protected personal identifiable information and credit card data for high net worth corporate clients. I did not call my parents to argue. I did not drive home to confront him. I simply dialed emergency services in Charlotte, reporting a hot burglary in progress involving corporate data theft. Through the security feed, I watched the flashing red and blue lights paint my living room walls. 2 police officers kicked the front door wide open. Jason froze, his hands empty, his face draining of all color. They slammed him against the wall, reading him his rights. He went into my apartment looking for petty revenge, and he was dragged out in handcuffs facing a felony breaking and entering charge, alongside attempted grand larceny. The fallout was swift and permanent. Because Jason was now facing a felony indictment, his pristine record was destroyed. Daniel was forced to liquidate his entire retirement savings just to afford Jason's criminal defense attorney. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was Emma. I let it go to voicemail. She wept through the speaker, begging me to call the police and drop the charges. She pleaded that family forgives family. I stared at the notification for 3 seconds. Then I hit delete. I blocked her number, officially severing the dead weight of my mother's complicity. I did not stop there. The very next morning, my real estate attorney formally filed a notice of default and demand for payment on the $55,000 lien. Because Daniel had just drained his accounts for the lawyer, he tried to take out a new loan against the house. The bank denied him instantly because my public lien froze his credit entirely. The legal trap snapped shut. They were out of money, out of options, and out of scapegoats. I foreclosed on the debt, legally forcing them to sell the property to pay me back. I am standing on the balcony now, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The air is cool. And for the first time in my entire life, my shoulders do not ache with the weight of someone else's expectations. When you grow up in a system designed to exploit you, the hardest thing in the world is realizing that the cage door has been unlocked the entire time. You just had to be willing to walk out and leave them behind. If you are listening to this and your chest feels tight because my story sounds a little too much like your own reality, I need you to hear me clearly. We are conditioned to believe that keeping the peace is our highest duty. But keeping the peace usually just means absorbing the war so no one else has to feel uncomfortable. When you are the responsible child in a toxic family, your competence is weaponized against you. There are 3 rules I had to learn the hard way. And they are the only reason I am breathing free air today. Rule number 1, silence is a subscription to abuse. When you do the heavy lifting without complaining, you are not proving your love. You are training abusers to view you as an infinite resource instead of a human being. They do not appreciate your silence. They rely on it to avoid accountability. Rule number 2, the power of the ledger. You must always keep the receipts. Financial receipts, text message, voicemails. Toxic families thrive on gaslighting. They will rewrite history to make you the villain the second you stop serving them. Hard, undeniable evidence is the only thing that shatters their distorted reality. Aunt Megan dropping those bank wires destroyed a decade of my father's lies in 5 seconds. Rule number 3, and this is the most important one, DNA is a biological accident, respect is a mandatory requirement. Society tells us we have to bleed ourselves dry for people simply because we share a last name. That is a lie designed to trap you. Cutting toxic blood ties is not an act of revenge. It is the ultimate act of self-preservation. You are allowed to grieve the family you deserved while simultaneously walking away from the family you actually got. I spent my whole life trying to earn a seat at a table where I was only ever valued as the waitress. So I walked out, bought my own wood, and built my own table. The people sitting with me now do not care what I can do for them. They only care that I am there. Who in your life is treating your sacrifices like a baseline expectation? Who is demanding you cater their life while refusing to even pour you a glass of water? And more importantly, what are you going to do about it today? Share this story with someone who needs the courage to stop cooking for people who will not even set the table. Your peace is worth the price of their disappointment. I know exactly what you were screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there thinking, why on earth did she wait so long? Why did she write a $55,000 check to people who treated her like garbage? It is the most common reaction when we watch someone endure toxic family dynamics. We judge the delay. But let me stop you right there. Because Rachel was not stupid. And she was not weak. She was caught in one of the most powerful psychological traps human beings can experience. In psychology, this is called the slot machine effect, or intermittent reinforcement. When a family treats you terribly 90% of the time, but gives you just a tiny crumb of validation, the other 10% may be a rare compliment, or a moment of peace, your brain becomes addicted to chasing that payout. You pull the lever again and again, thinking, maybe this time, if I just pay the mortgage, if I just cater the party, I will hit the jackpot and they will finally love me. Rachel was not paying for a house. She was trying to buy the love she was starved of, but the house always wins. What makes this story a masterclass in survival is how Rachel flipped the game. Let us break down the street-smart financial defense she used, because this is the blueprint for taking your power back. First, she used the buyout. When she handed over that massive check 2 years prior, she did not just gift the money out of blind loyalty. She attached a legal lien to the deed of the house. This is a crucial lesson. Never fund another adult's irresponsibility on a handshake. If you must lend money to family, put it in writing, make it legally binding, and attach it to an asset. That single piece of paper was her ultimate leverage. Second, she used the audit strategy. Scammers and toxic manipulators thrive in the dark. They hate details. When Jason tried to parade around as a wealthy entrepreneur, Aunt Megan brought the receipts into the broad daylight. Hard data bank transfers, court records, property liens cannot be gaslit. If you are dealing with narcissists, Stop arguing with emotion and start arguing with documentation. Build your case quietly and drop the evidence when they have an audience they cannot afford to lose. Rachel proved that you cannot negotiate with entitlement. You can only evict it. She stopped begging for a seat at a table where she was the only one serving the food. If you are watching this and you are the designated savior, the ATM, or the emotional punching bag for your family, hear this loud and clear. Your financial and emotional labor has immense value. If they do not respect the person, they no longer get access to the benefits. Drop a comment below if you have ever had to financially cut off a toxic relative. And subscribe if you are ready to stop paying the price for someone else's dysfunction. Stay smart. Keep your receipts. And remember, your peace is your most valuable asset. Protect it at all costs. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there thinking, why on earth did Rachel wait so long? Why would she hand over $55,000 to a father and brother who treated her like an unpaid servant? It is easy to judge the delay from the outside. It is easy to yell at the screen when we watch someone endure a toxic family dynamic. But let me stop you right there. Because Rachel was not weak, and she certainly was not stupid. She was trapped in one of the most powerful psychological snares human beings can experience, the slot machine effect. In psychology, we call this intermittent reinforcement. When your family treats you like a disposable appliance 95% of the time, but hands you a tiny crumb of validation, the other 5% a rare compliment, a quiet dinner without yelling, your brain gets addicted to chasing that payout. You keep pulling the lever. You tell yourself, maybe this time, if I just pay off this debt, if I just cater this one massive party, I will finally hit the jackpot and they will love me. Rachel was not paying a mortgage. She was trying to buy the unconditional love she was starved of. But with toxic people, the house always wins. What makes Rachel's story a masterclass in survival is how she systematically dismantled their game. Let us break down her street smart financial defense, because this is the exact blueprint you need if you are dealing with financial abusers. First, she utilized the buyout. When she handed over that massive check 2 years prior, she did not just gift the money out of blind emotional loyalty. She attached a formal legal lien to the deed of their house. The life lesson here is critical. Never fund another adult's irresponsibility on a handshake. If you are forced to bail out family, put it in writing. Make it legally binding and attach it to a real asset. Do not just give your money away, invest in your leverage or use it to buy your permanent freedom. Second, she applied the audit strategy. Scammers, narcissists, and manipulators thrive in the dark. They hate details, and they despise facts. When Jason tried to parade around high society as a wealthy entrepreneur, Rachel didn't scream or throw a tantrum. She let Aunt Megan bring the receipts into the broad daylight. Hard data bank transfers, court records, and property liens cannot be gaslit. Scammers hate an audit. If you want to shut down a manipulator, stop arguing with emotion and start arguing with undeniable documentation. Finally, she mastered building the case. Notice what Rachel did when Jason broke into her apartment. She didn't call him to argue. She didn't drive over to fight. She used her security system, dialed emergency services, and explicitly reported the attempted theft of corporate data. She built an airtight case and let the legal system do the heavy lifting, instantly upgrading a petty family dispute into a federal felony. Rachel proved a fundamental rule of life: you cannot negotiate with entitlement. You can only evict it. If you are watching this and you are the designated savior, the personal ATM, or the emotional punching bag for your family, hear this loud and clear. Your financial and emotional labor has immense value. If they refuse to respect the person, they immediately lose access to the benefits. Drop a comment below and let me know if you have ever had to financially cut off a toxic relative. Hit that subscribe button if you are ready to stop paying the price for someone else's dysfunction. Stay smart. Keep your receipts. And remember, your peace is your most valuable asset. Protect it at all costs,